You know, in Israel, when we're ready to leave a site, we get on the bus and we leave. Now, if you don't get on the bus in time,
take a taxi.
There's always a taxi. And we've only had to leave a few people behind because you know, we get to a site. Gia has been with us to Israel many times leading worship. Gia Lucid, worship leader at Jack Hibbs Church. She'll play 2 or 3 songs that we're singing, and then we'll have a short Bible study, and Roni will walk us through and explain stuff. And then we usually have 10 or 15 minutes on our own to wander about the site and take pictures and look at things. And so we say, okay, you're going to have about 15 minutes to wander around, but we're going to be on the bus at 10:45. So make sure you're on the bus at 10:45.
Okay.
So if you're late, you got to walk. So from here, we're on the bus and we're moving. Where are we going next, Sal?
Well, we just left, actually, Megiddo, if we did it in the right order, and then we're driving to Nazareth.
Yep. You know, today Nazareth is a big city. It's the biggest Arab city. It's the biggest community of Christian community in the country. For many years, it was only Christian city. There were no Christians, but because it was a main city since the British came to the country in 1917, they turned it into a main city, and suddenly a lot of Christians came to the city, and with the Christian came the Muslims, and they lived okay. I mean, because Nazareth is such a big Christian city, so when the state of Israel was established, you know, in Israel, the day off is Shabbat on Saturday. The only city in Israel which the day off officially is Sunday is Nazareth, of the Christian community. Unfortunately, the Christian community are not very much into having many babies. Average Christian family have 2 kids, 2, 3 kids. The Muslim have 10, and that caused to break the balance. And today the majority are Muslims. And about 2 years ago, the Muslim came and said, okay, no, we're going to turn the official day into Friday because we are Muslims. And then the Israeli said, no, it's a government decision. You cannot change it. And the only place in Israel that Sunday is the day off is going to be in Nazareth, even though the majority is Muslim. One of the reasons that Nazareth is very important because according to the tradition, this church that was built here in the 1960s by a guy by the name of Giovanni Muccio sits on top of the place where the angel Gabriel in prayer of Mary announced her that she's going to have a baby, and we call it the Church of Annunciation. It's an interesting place because the city of Nazareth was destroyed a few times between the Muslims and the Christians, and each time they built another church. Eventually, there was a little tiny church that was built over there until the 1960s. The Catholic world said, hey, this is insane. For us, the Virgin Mary is so important, and there is no church that's dedicated to the Virgin Mary. So they brought an architect from Rome, and he built 2 churches on top of each other. The lower church preserved the old churches, and the new one is for the Catholic community for the Holy Mass on Sunday. But this is not the main thing, is that Nazareth, when it says in the Bible that Nazareth was a big city, in matter of fact, when they built the church in the 1960s, they had an opportunity to do excavations because there was nothing above. They just knocked down the old church, and they were digging there for 9 years, and they couldn't find the city of Nazareth. And the reason why they couldn't, they couldn't find the city of Nazareth is because there was no city of Nazareth. And in archaeology, there is a very simple rule: if there's nothing, you won't find anything. That's rule number 1. And there was no city of Nazareth because at the time of Christ, Nazareth was not a city. Nazareth was a big work camp of professional workers who came from the center of the country, like Jerusalem, Bethlehem, so on, mason carpenters, and they were taking part in the big building project of Herod the Great, and later on Herod Antipas' son. So all the attempts to find anything in Nazareth were failed because there was no city of Nazareth. Most of the people lived in sort of caves and so on. And sometimes they have build a little structure above the cave, And cave is very comfortable to live on those days because it's very pleasant in the winter and very pleasant in the summer. And so that's why they didn't find the city of Nazareth. We think that today in Nazareth, at the time of Christ, there were between 60 to 80 families. This is it. This is the whole Nazareth. Next to Nazareth is a big city, a big Jewish city, man of Sipori. And this was the center of the Jewish rabbinical thought. I mean, all big rabbis, Hillel, Shammai, all the big families lived in Nazareth. And why is it so interesting? Because if I live in Nazareth 2,000 years ago and there are only 60 families, why should I send my kids to study here in a little tiny village when a mile and a half away from here is the best school in the world for kids? So we assume that most likely, if Jesus was raised in Nazareth, he went to school in Sipori. And if he went to school in Sipori, we as Jewish people, everything is writing. Every time when two rabbis are having a little discussion between themselves, right away they write it down. We know which rabbi was teaching in the beginning of the first century in Sipori. We have his name. And matter of fact, in Judaism, we have a lot of time when we have a little dispute between a rabbi. You know, if I'm going to take a verse in the Bible that says, you shouldn't cook a calf in his mother's milk, and I give it to 10 rabbis, I'm going to get 10 different opinions. And, and so every time when the rabbi were discussing this issue, they wrote down what every rabbi said, and eventually if there's coming a rabbi who is powerful, he said, okay, everybody thinks so, we're going to go like that. And the Jewish faith today is built according to what rabbi decided how should the Jewish people behave, according to the discussion with the rabbis. And for the rabbi who was teaching Jesus Sipori, we have a lot of writing. And according to what he wrote, it's interesting to see how Jesus is teaching to compare to what the rabbi wrote down, okay? He's a rabbi from the house of Hillel, and I'm not going to make it complicated, but I can tell you one thing for sure. We know who is the rabbi, we know what he was teaching, and many, many pastors in the last 40 years were trying to compare what the rabbi from the house of Hillel was teaching in Sipori's and what Jesus is teaching while he's teaching. Very interesting to read the way they compare it.
Wow.
So this is Nazareth, the little tiny village that Jesus spent there most likely all his life until he left and he started his ministry. Nazareth village.
And you know, in the Bible it says, can anything good come from Nazareth?
Right.
I've been there. The answer is no. However, we do stop in Nazareth because there's a little village called Nazareth Village, and you're seeing it here. It's a
really cool.
reenactment of the first century. There's a shepherd, they're making bread, we eat dinner, they make yarn with silk, and I mean, everyone's wearing, garb from the first century. There's animals. It's really cool to walk through it. It gives you a flavor of what it was like in the time of Jesus. But everything else in Nazareth, terrible.
Didn't they say that was the only place they found like a little vineyard and a well? And
Right.
Yeah.
So
And the food is terrible.
Well, actually, the chicken was good.
we liked it. Ronnie doesn't like
And,
it.
and then the pita bread was pretty good. They baked it fresh right in front of you. Okay, it wasn't that bad.
Moving right along, right?
Moving right
It's a
along.
nice experience. We do it on the first day, so everybody's tired. So they have no idea what they're
They
eating.
don't know the difference. That's right. Where are we going now, Sally?
Cana, which is right there in Nazareth.
Cana is the village of Nathanael, the one who says what good is going to come from Cana. Cana was the big city. If we go and we stop over there, usually we don't because we are tired and it's the end of the day, but if we would have stopped, and sometimes we do it, we stop in the wedding church, which is a church that looks like a very unusual structure in the middle of a Muslim village, a very Muslim village. It was built by a priest who came from Salzburg in Austria, and he took the blueprints of his church and he made an identical church over there. For us, it's a very interesting place to visit. You know that we keep on saying that on the third day. I keep on telling the people that every time when there is a number in the New Testament, it has a Jewish meaning, and of course, as you heard from Clark when he said that Jewish people are getting married on Tuesday, because it says in the Bible that on the third day God says "Pa'amayim ki tov," twice it was good. And until nowadays, many Israelis like to get married on Tuesdays because of the meaning of Tuesday. And if you want to see how does it affect the Christian world, it says in the Bible, on the third day there was a wedding in Cana. And when they say the third day, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And you see, what we do today is identical to what we did here 2,000 years ago. And usually when we go to Cana, we go down to the level of the street from the time of Christ. The only problem is that there are two churches next to each other. One is a Roman Catholic church, which is what we saw, and next to it there's a little alley, and on the other side of the alley there's a Greek Orthodox. There's always clashes between the Greek Orthodox and the Roman Catholics in the Holy Land. Who is in the right place? I mean, first of all, I'm not so sure that if they are in the right place to start with. The only thing that gives us connection to Cana is the name that the Muslim pronounce. They call it Cana, which means from the Arab language we came to the conclusion that this is Cana. And of course, and we found the synagogue, that there was a synagogue under the church nowadays, which makes it a little easy for me because Jewish people are going to get married in the synagogue. Very, very common. So so it means the church is standing on top of the synagogue, which means that's where the wedding took place. So what are the Greek Orthodox going to say about it? Are we going to lose here? What really upset the Greek Orthodox is when they built their church, they had a chance to excavate, and they found one huge water jar. So remember, Jesus was converting water into wine, and the Greek Orthodox were very upset that the Roman Catholics found one big water jar. So quickly they had their own excavations, and they found two water jars. Now, as you can see, they are leading 2-1. No, but I can really solve the problem because if the wedding was at the synagogue, most likely the party was in the yard. And like that, I can say the Greek Orthodox are sitting there. Everybody can be happy. So I can put the Greek Orthodox into the festival. But if this is Cana and this is the place, so of course the water jar has nothing to do with anything. It's in Cologne today, in the city of Cologne in Germany. But Cana is nice because it's the big city and it has the first miracle that took place over there.
And we know where it is because there's a gift store that says Cana.
That's right. Absolutely.
Okay, then we get on the bus and we head towards the Galilee.
Yes. Amazing.
Tiberias, the Sea of Galilee. Man, it's a welcome sight to be driving through the canyons, the valleys, and all of a sudden you look out and you see the Sea of Galilee. It's one of, and there's Danielle. Remember Daniel?
Yep.
Daniel Carmel.
Danny Carmel. He owns the boat and he plays music. He sings songs for us out on the boat. We've had him here at the church a couple of times.
I know.
And he has sang for us on a Sunday. And it's just an amazing time on the Sea of Galilee. I love the Sea of Galilee. Now, the Sea of Galilee down in the Galilee area, and look, there's Mount Arbel. There's Mount Arbel. We remember one time Ronnie took us up to Mount Arbel, and there's a lookout point up there. Well, it just was a dirt road with just open, and you can walk up and look at it. Then eventually they built, the government built it, make it like a park, a national park. So you had to pay to get in. There was a parking lot and the whole thing. We got up there, we were very sad because it was late. It was closed. And Ronnie goes, we'll just jump over the little fence. It was a little fence. We could just jump over and go check it out. And we did. And so it's awesome. You stand up here on Mount Arbel and you can look out and see the whole Sea of Galilee. It's amazing. Now, apparently they had video cameras up there because Ronnie got a call that night from the Minister of Tourism, Mr. Vinta. Was that you? No, that wasn't me.
Did you want to point out Dove Canyon?
Dove Canyon, the Dove Canyon rock. There's Dove Canyon. That's the valley that you would walk from Nazareth to the Sea of Galilee. There's no other way to get there.
Yep.
And so that is for sure the route that Jesus took. And we're there, we see it, we're on it. It is overwhelming, to be sure. The Sea of Galilee, a beautiful place. It's about 680 feet below sea level, a very subtropical kind of climate. They grow bananas, passion fruit. It's just an amazing place. Now, with that, just north of the Sea of Galilee is called Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon, the crown of the Galilee. It rises some 9,200 feet above sea level. It's covered with snow. And what happens is the cold air from Mount Hermon comes down and mixes with the... Stop right there. Okay.
This is such a memorable thing.
When we're driving through Israel, we're right up at the Sea of Galilee. We're at the northern part of Israel. And once in a while, you'll see these signs, danger, mines, minefields, because they're left over from some of the wars in 48, from 67, so on and so forth. And one time, and we're driving by, and somebody said, Roni, what are those signs? He says, well, it says danger, minefield. In English, and in Hebrew, it says danger, minefield. But in Arabic, it says picnic ground.
It was a very bad joke. Just erase it. It didn't happen, no.
It happens every time we go, and it's always funny. Now,
I tell you what's funny. When you're teaching and someone is taking his pants off, he wants to walk on the water. That's funny.
Now, the point I was making is the cold air from Mount Hermon comes down to the hot air on the Dead Sea, and when hot and cold air mixes, and that's why you get such violent storms on the Sea of Galilee. You get incredibly violent storms. And we've been out there a couple of times when it was bad.
Windy.
I prayed a couple of times, God, just send a storm, and he did. Now, the Sea of Galilee, one of my favorite places, because it, when you're on the, when you're touring Israel, they'll excavate, and they'll dig down 10, 20, 30, 40 feet and find stuff. And that's where, the time of Jesus. But on the Sea of Galilee, that's it. I mean, that's where Jesus was. Now, maybe it's a little more water, maybe a little less water, but still, you're there. And it's an amazing place. In Mark's gospel, several things on the Sea of Galilee, but in Mark's gospel, in Mark chapter 4, Jesus just gave the parable of the sowers. They left Capernaum, and he tells the disciples, he said, let us go to the other side. So they get into the boat, and they start traversing to the other side. Now, they don't cut across the middle of the lake, the sea. They kind of go along the edge. However, in Mark chapter 4, there was a great storm. And you remember the Bible says Jesus was asleep in the stern of the boat. Okay, that's the back of the boat for you nautically challenged. He was asleep on a pillow in the back of the boat, and the disciples wake him up. They said, Lord, do you not care that we're perishing? And Jesus said, you woke me up for that? No, he didn't say that. And Jesus said, peace, be still. Now, he was talking to the wind and the waves. I get that. But I have to believe some of that was for these guys who woke him up. Peace, be still. And we're told in verse 40, their problem. Jesus said, you have no faith. You have no faith. Jesus said, let us go to the other side. He didn't say, I hope we make it to the other side. They lacked faith in what Jesus said was going to happen. And I think one problem we often face as it pertains to faith, typically we think of faith as a quantity. And it's understandable why. In Matthew chapter 6, in verse 30, Jesus talks about those who have little faith. In Matthew chapter 8, verse 10, he talks about those who have great faith. In fact, the disciples thought faith was a quantity. In Luke chapter 17, verse 5, they said, Lord, increase our faith. They thought they needed more faith. But in verse 6 of Luke 17, Jesus straightens them out. He said, if you have faith as a Mustard seed. If you have a granule of faith, you can say to this mulberry tree, be plucked up by the roots and cast into the sea. You could move mountains if you have enough faith. So apparently, it's not about the quantity of our faith. It's about the object of our faith. Because our faith is only as great as the object in which we place it. If we're placing our faith in ourselves, our own strength, our own abilities, our own smarts, O ye of little faith. But when we're putting our faith in God, now we have great faith because there's no greater object we can put our faith in. So for you and for me, this becomes important because we have faith in Jesus Christ for our eternal life. Okay, 4 of you. So why not have the same faith in Jesus Christ for every moment of every day in life? Wow. Because the truth of the matter is we go through a lot of different things in life, do we not? A lot of bumps and bruises, a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of ups and downs. Does anybody understand what we're talking about? Good, the same 4. But if we have faith in God for our eternal life, why not have faith in God for our temporal life, for every moment of every day in life? And here, this is the lesson we learned on the Sea of Galilee. It's just amazing. Great, great place.
This is from the cliff of Arbel.
Oh,
that's
That's
a
the
picture
view.
from the Arbel. It says in the Bible, the Bible is not biography. It's not, doesn't give us too many details, especially when it comes to geography, but we can figure out a lot from between the lines. It says that Jesus went to a high mountain by himself. That's the only place, the cliff of Arbel is the highest one. From there you can see the whole Sea of Galilee. And sometimes if we have a chance and we can ignore the park authorities' standards, so we can really get there because now they give us hard time. And this is really a beautiful place to end up the day. Yeah, am I right? Standing on the cliff of Arbel is, we always look for something to end up the day in a very powerful place. This is it. And the Sea of Galilee, we call it sea. It's a lake. It's a lake. It has water. The Jordan flows in. The Jordan flows out, and the water moves all the time toward the south. And for many, many years, it used to be our main drinking water source. I mean, 40% from our drinking water came from the sea. But if there's a drought, and we have sometimes 5, 6, 7 years drought, the level of the water is coming down, and then we cannot take water because under the Sea of Galilee, if this is the Sea of Galilee, it's sweet water. But under this water, we have salty springs. And what prevents the salty springs from coming up is the weight of the sweet water. If we're going to take too much sweet water, we won't have enough weight, and the water is going to get salty. And then our drinking water is going to become undrinkable. And we always are concerned. In 1949, an Israeli by the name of Professor Zarkin invented something amazing. We call it double osmosis purification, what you call desalinization plant. And we were smart enough to sell it to everybody in the world except for ourselves. I mean, over here, the shoemaker walks barefoot. And about 10 years ago, about 12 years ago, we had a terrible drought. And we didn't know what to do. I mean, we couldn't get water from the sea, and we had no idea. We thought maybe to get water from an iceberg, from Antarctica, to carry the iceberg all the way to. And people think we are crazy, so it won't change their mind. And then some people say, let's take a tanker with water. And then maybe someone said, let's pray. So we prayed. You know what? It worked. We had 3 weeks of rain and storms and snow and melting, whatever, and the sea was very full. And it worked, but it doesn't always work like that. So we decided to have desalinization plant, and now most of the water that Israelis are drinking is water from the Mediterranean. We don't tell them. Israelis have no clue. If we tell them, they never drink it. So they know something in the air, desalinization, but we don't really tell them. But now, if you come to the Sea of Galilee, Pastor Clark and Sally, you're going to be amazed. It's full.
Is it full?
So full,
Wow.
It's unbelievable. It's really beautiful.
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. And
Gracias a Dios.
yes, yeah. We have no idea what's the name of God in Hebrew. We don't know. We don't. We think some people call him Yehovah, whatever. But in Hebrew we say Hashem, the name. But we don't know Adonai, my master, but we don't really know how to call him. So, yeah. But this is the sea.
Speaking of the sea, it got so low one year. What was his name?
What, the guy from the boat?
There's a kibbutz, and we'll talk about kibbutz today as well. Gennesor, kibbutz Gennesor. What was his name?
I remember in a minute. What? I don't remember everything. My age is not working.
I forgot his name too. There were two guys who lived at the kibbutz,
brothers, yes.
and they found a boat submerged in the water. Or in the mud, because the sea was so low, and they excavated it, and it is an amazing archaeological find from presumably the 1st century. They call it the Jesus boat. Now, it didn't have a plaque said this was Jesus' boat on it, but it was from that period of time. And when we set sail, typically we sail from the area of Tiberias on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee, and we sail to the northern shore to Kibbutz Gennesor. And there's a museum there, and the Jesus boat is on display. You can Google it, the Jesus boat on the Sea of Galilee. And it is an amazing archaeological find. And a couple of times, Roni introduced us to the guy who found it.
Which I can't remember his name, by the way. I can go through
I got one of the books, and he signed it for us. We met with him. He talked with us. We talked to the whole group.
He was walking on the shore, those people that walk with those metal detector looking for whatever. He was looking for something old, and he stepped on a nail. Is that a nail? So he looked at the nail, and then he kept on going, and he stepped on another nail. So now his curiosity rose, and he bent down to clear it up a little bit, and he found out it's a piece of wood, and they started to clean it up a little bit. And then he and his brother decided to keep it as a secret, their own private archaeological excavation. They won't tell anybody. And for about a week after work, they came, and every time they clean up a little bit with the piece of wood. And then the weather forecast was floods, and they were afraid that flood is going to take their excavation. So, with not much happiness in their heart, they decided to call an Israeli archaeologist from Haifa University, and she came over and she realized right away it's a boat, it's the side of a boat, and it was sucked in the water covered by mud. And if you tried to lift it, your finger went through the wood. That's because it was 2,000 years. It was in the mud, in the water. And then they found they were able to expose the whole thing, but they couldn't move it. And then someone came up with the idea. When you go to the Home Depot and you buy this spray with the foam that expanded, So they covered the whole boat with that polyethylene foam. And then after 2,000 years, they put it again in the water, and they took it for another ride in the Sea of Galilee. They brought it to a place. It's a cocoon. In the meantime, they built quickly an aquarium, and slowly they open it, with a chili knife. And the idea, how do you dry it up? You can't put it in the sun. It's going to turn into dust. And eventually, they decided to put it in a bathtub, which high humidity. And eventually, it didn't work. And one of the girls on the team, she said, I have a better idea. Why don't we inject wax? Like the ladies, they put on legs and and they did put, they injected wax into the wood. It took them 8 years to cover the whole boat, and now the boat is there. And now, the first thing we want to know, how old is the boat? And right away, the dating, we don't use what used to be in the past carbon-14 test. When you go and it plus minus 60 to 80 years. I want to be more accurate. So today there are radioactive dating system like arrogant gas that is going to be giving us plus minus 2 years. And we dated the boat to the year between 35 and 37 AD. This is the time that the disciples are on the sea. Most of the disciples are fishermen. And that's why we call it Jesus boat.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but we don't call it Jesus anymore because people think, we thought maybe it's going to offend people. So now we call it the ancient boat from the Sea of Galilee. Yeah. It's the oldest wooden boat in the world. And if you ever wonder how Jesus sleeps on the stern and everything, you can see it so clearly. Everything is right in front of you. It was preserved in an amazing way because it was covered by mud. In a sweet water, there's a bacteria which is going right away to disintegrate the. But over here, it was covered by mud, and it preserved it. 2,000 years old wooden boat from the time of Christ, which is a fisherman boat that was found in the area that Jesus is very active. I mean, what else can I ask? I mean, this is, and we go there.
Moshe and Yuval. Nahon? Yeah.
And there's a picture
I had
of
to
the
look it
Jesus
up.
boat
okay.
on page 19 in your booklet. It's kind of small, but that's the picture of it.
Yeah, it's an amazing. Yeah, here it is. It's a complete boat.
Yeah.
You know that we opened it in the year 2000, and it was a holy year in the Vatican, and we got a message from the Pope. Can you send it to Rome? But kibbutz people, they said, you want to see it? Come over. I mean, that's the Yuval and
Yuval.
Yovi.
Speaking of the Pope, when we go up to Mount Carmel, Pope Road.
Yeah. We even when we go to one of the Beattitudes,
too, that's right.
We had twice a visit of a pope in the country. One of them was in 1964 when Paul VI came to the country. At that time, there was no relationship between Israel and the Vatican. He didn't want to meet Israelis. They were boycotting Israel at that time. But Israel we were so overwhelmed. Wow, a real pope is coming. So we decided to take the dirt road and pave it with asphalt, which didn't really impress him. But in 2000 came the late Pope, John Paul II, and he came to Israel to be with the Israelis. He came to ask for forgiveness on behalf of the Catholic Church from the Jewish nation. He came to pray with the Jews at the Western Wall. And then he started to visit some of the churches, and we were so happy he's there. So again, we paved all the road with asphalt, and his staff was very amused by that, and they called it Pope Road. So we have a lot of Pope roads that we're going to drive when we're going to be in Israel. This is a Pope Road, still. Yeah.
Well, we need to invite him back so you'll
That's
redo
right.
the roads.
And, we decided to invite him every 10 years. The next time, go to the desert a little bit because we need some new roads over there. Yeah, right.
Okay, the next site is
Capernaum.
Yep.
Wow, this is
Capernaum.
amazing.
Capernaum, the village of Nahum. We call it Capernaum. It is an amazing place for several reasons. Stop right there. See this structure? Giant spaceship. No, the Catholics, this site's ran by the Catholics, and they built this church on top of some ruins underneath, and Roni will talk about that in a few minutes. But the whole floor of this church is plexiglass. And you can see down below the ruins, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But Roni got us in here a couple of times. Only Catholic groups are allowed to get in there. But the word Catholic means universal. So we're kind of universal. So they let us in, and we were able to tour inside there. But the city of Capernaum, and Ronnie's going to talk about it, it's an amazing, it's there on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. It was Jesus' headquarters, the base of operation for his ministry there in the Sea of Galilee. In fact, you saw the little sign, it says Jesus' town. That's from the Bible, by the way. In Matthew chapter 9, verse 1, it's called his own city. His own city, Capernaum, because it goes back to the book of Isaiah in Isaiah chapter 9, when it talks about a light being brought forth to the Gentiles. The Messiah would be the light from Isaiah. Because in Isaiah 9 it says, in the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, a great light shall come. In the land of Zebulun. There's a little story behind that. When we get to Capernaum, we used to go to, there was a movie house there, like a little theater. And we would go into the theater, and the lights would turn off, and then the screen would turn on, and then this voice said, in the land of Zebulun.
And everybody starts snoring.
And everyone starts snoring because jet lag. This is when jet lag hits you. And so we stopped going to the movie because everybody slept right through it. It was the first few times we thought it was hilarious because we're sitting there laughing at everyone. They're snoring like crazy. But there's so many things we can talk about, so many miracles, so many teachings, so many events happened in and around the area of Capernaum here. But you know, the one thing that really stuck out to me is this is the area that Jesus picked his disciples. And in a couple of days, we're going to be driving south to a place called Bethshan or Scythopolis. It was the center of intelligentsia. And Jesus didn't go there to pick his disciples. He went to the Sea of Galilee. He picked people that were just ordinary, common folk like you and me. And you know, as I thought about that, I couldn't help but just think how blessed that God chooses the foolish, not the wise, the base, not the great. And this should bless all of us, because God, he just wants to choose us as ordinary people to do an extraordinary work. You know, he chose his disciples. They're called the Talmudim, the disciples. And all of us are disciples in a sense. We're sent out ones, we might say. And it doesn't matter how talented or gifted you may be or not, God wants to use us. And so this spot really speaks to my heart in a variety of ways. Now, that right there, that's a 4th century synagogue. A 4th century synagogue. But inside of it, there's an excavation that you can look down and you will see a 1st century synagogue from the time of Jesus. Now stop right there for a minute.
Oops, okay.
Oh, keep going.
I'll go back.
Oh, no.
Anyway,
It'll come out.
it'll come up again.
Right there.
Okay.
Right.
There, stop. So this is the synagogue, and right over here in the corner, right in there, there's an excavation. You can see the 1st century synagogue from the time of Jesus. And there's no question he was in, and we're standing right there where Jesus no doubt stood. It is absolutely amazing. And so this is the synagogue, and right next to the synagogue is the Bet Midrash, not the Bet Sefer. Bet Sefer is house of books, a school. This is the Bet Midrash, the house of study. And this is where they would study through here. In fact, there's a lot of stuff going on right there. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, Ronnie? The synagogue and what's on the floor and all that?
Me personally, I like Capernaum because it's endless. You can spend there half a day. You know, Jesus performed 33 miracles. Mm-hmm. 1/3 of them is going to be there. 10 miracles only in Capernaum. Matter of fact, the place we didn't know where the place is. The place was destroyed by an earthquake until an American pastor came and he identified, his name is Robinson, and he identified the place. And quickly the Franciscan came to purchase the whole area, and they started to excavate, trying to find few things which were important for them, and they stopped. So this is not the whole village. This is the property of the Franciscan. Okay, the village is much bigger. And Jesus came there because he was accepted there. I mean, in Nazareth, they didn't accept him. They think something is wrong with him. They were trying to push him from the cliff down. So he left Nazareth. He never, ever goes back to Nazareth. So we call it, when we say Jesus from Nazareth, I mean, I should go with what you just said. You should be called Jesus from Capernaum, because it says he went back to his city, Capernaum, but for sure not from Nazareth. But over here, the church in the 4th century, most of the people are going to be Christians in the city. There are no Jewish people in the city of Capernaum. And here came the Christian community, and they decided to build here, right over here on this spot, a synagogue. And the question is, why a non-Jewish community is going to build a synagogue? Because at the same time when they built the synagogue here, right over here, they built a church over the house of Peter. They found the house of Peter, and that's the house of Peter. And the question is, we don't know. It's such a good question, we don't know. We think it was built as a monument for the rabbi because Jesus was never in the church. He was never a Christian. And most likely, most of his activity is going to be as a rabbi in the city. Right. And this is the house of Peter, by the way. that we can identify with no doubt as the house of Peter. And of course, in the 4th century, when they built the synagogue, they built it to commemorate the rabbi because Jesus performed 2 miracles in the synagogue, okay, with the daughter of Jairus, and the guy who was crazy and shouting. But anyway, we, in the Jewish way of thinking, you cannot take a synagogue here in Temecula and turn it tomorrow into in and out. It doesn't work in Judaism. In the Jewish way of thinking, if there's a synagogue here, you can only turn it into another synagogue. Okay, that's why in Germany, all the synagogues that were destroyed by the Nazis in what you call the Kristallnacht, where they rebuilt as synagogues by the Germans. So if we have a synagogue here from the 4th century, which is this synagogue, and I want to look for the synagogue from the time of Christ, I have to look below that, and we found the synagogue from the time of Jesus. And this is super important for us because this is exactly where he was teaching, preaching, and healing, this synagogue. This is where he, me as a young man, if I'm a Jewish boy 2,000 years ago, I can't say, okay, I'm going to study and I'm going to be a disciple. That doesn't work in Judaism. In Judaism, the rabbi is watching the kids, the Talmidim, as you said, and when they reach the age of 14, 15, he's coming to someone and says, points a finger and said, Lech acharai, follow me. And he's going to become a disciple. Every rabbi can pick up 5 disciples. And pay attention that Jesus picked up 12. It's a very, very thing. And this is something very, very powerful. And those kids are following the rabbi. He's going to be the mentor, and then they become rabbis, and they pick 5 disciples, and that's how they spread it in Judaism. So that's where he picked up disciples in Capernaum. We found a lot of stuff that has to do with. For example, over here you can see there is a menorah. You can see it's a Jewish village. This is the Jewish symbol. And of course, and we found a lot of, it was a Jewish village. And that's where Jesus felt very comfortable. It became the local one. That's where he picked up the disciples. And the excavations are amazing. I mean, it was dug by the Franciscan. We like the Franciscan. We do like the Franciscan as archaeologists because they study in Rome. And they come out as very professional archaeologists. Usually whatever they publish is very good, it's very close to it's very accurate. It's very, and if it's not, they make it accurate, but it's okay. But we like them. There is, in Hebrew University in Jerusalem on Mount Scopus, there's a university, and over there's a Franciscan monk, with the brown robe and the hood and the sandals. His name is Father Severus, and he's teaching Jewish kids in Hebrew archaeology. And he's a superb teacher, this monk. And every year they make a survey who is the most beloved professor in the university. And for the last 10 years, it's much above everybody else. Many times I see him running in Capernaum. I say, Father Severus, can I ask you a question? He's like Father Kelly. Can I ask you a question? He said, sure. And I ask him a question, and I get 2 hours answer. So I don't ask him anymore. But he's the one that it's amazing to listen to him when he goes in the city of Capernaum. His city, which is on the northern shore, which is really amazing place to visit. People are walking out of there. We can even prove. I mean, we found out that all the houses had a roof that was half concrete and half wooden beams, because it's very warm there. You don't need, the homes are built from lava rock. You know how warm it gets in the summertime. So people used to go on the roof to sleep. Like Peter went to sleep on the roof in Jaffa, and over there, if half of the roof is wooden beams, that explains when the crippled man, they were trying to bring him close to Jesus, and they couldn't because there were so many people around. So what they did, they went on the roof, they moved the wooden beams, and they lowered them down. So everything that we found in archaeology is a perfect match to the scriptures, and Capernaum is superb.
It's amazing. And when Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law, right outside the synagogue, you can see in the house, Peter's house, it has the 8 sides.
Right. Octagonal.
Yeah, so even the early inhabitants of this understood this was an important structure because they built an 8-sided monument into it, and that's why the church built that structure on top of it.
In Israel, early Christianity is building every time when there's something that happened there, an event. The church is going to be built in octagonal, 8 corners. 8 means very, very, very important number in early Christianity. And over there they built a church over the house of Peter. We found the house of Peter. We identified it, the house of Peter. You know, in Jerusalem, the Jews were expelled. So for 200 years, let's say from the year 135 to 325, there are no Jews in Jerusalem. And so we have a hard time to identify the places from the time of Christ. Around the Sea of Galilee, the Jewish population was never expelled. They stayed over there. They became Messianic and Christians, and they started to worship on places which were important for them. So the same group of Jews who became Messianic, who lived in Capernaum, they knew exactly where Peter lived. And when he died in the middle of the first century, they started to worship there. But because they couldn't build a church because Christianity was not permitted, so they had a little worship area, and we found that worship area only in the 4th century, around 325, when Constantine is going to turn the religious into permitted religious, they started to build churches. So suddenly we see on the same spot they built a church. And then so many people came to visit the place, and they said, wow, we have to build another one. So they built a big octagonal church, which indicates something happened there. And you know what happened there? That's where the healing of the mother-in-law. So we are really walking in the footsteps of Christ. You really feel that it happened there 5 minutes ago. And that's an amazing feeling. You walk out of Capernaum and said, whoa, we really feel it. You sense it, and people come to me after we leave Capernaum and said, listen, this was powerful. This was powerful. And I know exactly what I mean because I feel it every tour. And you know, for me as a guide, what a great feeling is when people are coming all the way from California and they walk out and they said, this was the most powerful moment we ever experienced.
It's life-changing.
Life-changing.
Now, they made, as Roni mentioned, there in Capernaum was a big city, manufacturing. One thing they did manufacture was the millstone, and that, of course, is how they grind the meal, grind the wheat, put the stick through it and turn it and then grind it. That's what the millstone. Remember, Jesus talks about putting the millstone around your neck and throwing you into the sea? That's the millstone. It's gigantic. It's super heavy. And the sea was a place of death. It was foreboding. The sea was dark. It was a picture of death. So when he said, he's going to put this around your neck and throw you into the sea, it was pretty serious, very interesting. And then right over here,
this is the second part.
This is the second part. This is called the Gethsemane stone. This is the big heavy stone that crushes the olive oil, crushes the olives to bring out the oil. And we're going to talk more about that when we get to the Garden of Gethsemane in a couple of days. I mean, well, today, but you know what I mean, in our travels. I'm used to talking about it ahead of time.
You know what's the difference between green olives and black olives? 10 weeks.
The color.
The difference between green olives and black olives is 10 weeks. If you leave them in the tree, they're going to get I call them dark. They're a little purple. They're not black, but they're dark purple. And that's when they're loaded with oil, and that's when we bring them and we press them. And what Pastor Clark showed you is the first place, I want to get rid of the pits. Because if I press them, they're going to turn the olive oil into bitterness. So we put the olives, we press them once, we take the millstone, we go around, and then quickly we get rid of the pits, and then I have to take the olive oil out. It's from the first press. So usually I can put water and it floats, and I take it like that, or I can take it with a straw. And the first press goes to the temple. First press goes to the temple in Judaism. The second press is for the salad. We press it now in the big stone. We press it. Second time we press it for the salad. The third press is going to be for the olive oil. In the oil lamp. When you need light at nighttime, and you don't press it one more time, and it looks terrible. It looks like someone chewed it and vomited and chewed it again and vomited again. It looks really, really bad. But this is the best hand soap. And if you ever ask your mechanic, how do you clean your hands? And the other day, it says olive oil soap. And that's what they do. And of course, in Hebrew, as you heard from Pastor Clark, the place where you press the olives, you call it gat shmanim. Gat shmanim, the place of the shemen, the place of the oil. But the Greek language have a little problem. There is no sh. There's no sh. In Greek, they don't say shalom, they say salom. They don't say Shimon, they say Simon. Okay? They don't say Hoshana, they say Hosanna, because there's no sh in Greek. And instead of saying Gat Shmanim, they say Gethsemane. And when we are going to go now on our tour to Gethsemane, that's the place, Gethsemane. That's where Jesus was captured. That's the place where you press the olives. Gachmanim in Hebrew, Gethsemane in Greek.
And the different olive oils?
The different oils, yeah. That's okay. It depends what you marinate them with. You know, you can take it's not a peach that you take an olive and you bite it and that doesn't work. In order to enjoy the taste of an olive, you have to marinate it for 10 weeks. And usually when you have different kinds of olive, it depends how you marinate them. Sometimes with garlic, sometimes with but eventually 10 weeks of marination is going to give the taste to the olives. Otherwise, they're going to be like shrimp, tasteless.
Yeah, that's in Capernaum.
Okay.
Ken, Yofi.
Next place is Mount of Beatitudes.
Mount of Beatitudes.
The Mount of Beatitudes. Now, the Mount of Beatitudes is just above Capernaum. You're looking down into the Sea of Galilee, and this is a really nice site. It's ran by the Catholic Church as well. Roni has been kicked out of here more than once.
Yeah, the nuns don't like me. You know, if you go to a church, you're not allowed to talk. So, by the way, in order to be a nun on Mount of Beatitudes, you have to be that high. I'm very serious. I mean, I never saw someone this. Always them. Like when you go to Disney, you say if you're above this age, you have to, same thing over there. And it says when you come in, it says, shh, no talking. And they're very funny, those nuns. I really like them. I mean, they don't like me, but I do like them. I mean, sometimes I was walking to church and someone asked me, what's that? And I said, and they come to me, they say, you out. So I've been thrown out of there about 3 or 4 times. And now they see me, they come close to me. For many, many times, when you come and you see a group is making a little noise, they come out and they clap and say, shh, holy sight, which means please be quiet. And I'm very careful, you know, singing is okay, teaching is okay, but not laughing. Laughing is not good. And that's when they really get upset and they come and take their hands. But 6, 7 years ago, someone got them a wireless microphone. Now they come out and they say, please be quiet. And this holy place. I was there with a couple a few years ago, and I was standing with a couple talking to them, and there was a group of, mute people, deaf people, they couldn't speak. And they were quiet, but most likely the nuns saw a big group, and quickly they came to us and said, please be quiet. I mean, how can we be more quiet than, but never mind that. But they are really sweet, and they are standing over there, and they give us our time. But I want to say something. Can I say something? I'm looking, because it's my English is terrible. I've been to Greece a while ago, and over there, they spoke about the Mount of Beatitudes, and someone told me something amazing about Mount of Beatitudes, that the Beatitudes, they were written in the Gospel of Matthew. It was written to a bunch of Jews that eventually the Beatitude is the center of everything that you're teaching today. And interesting enough, it was the first. I'm trying to find a word in Hebrew, so I'm going to so I know how to say it in English. The first 3 Beatitudes, Jesus doesn't talk to the people, to the greatest people. He's talking to people that say, I want you to be gentle. I want you to not to go and suffer from what we call arrogance. And this became to be very powerful. Now, we spoke about it in the Israeli media now, about how we Israelis became a little arrogant. And, and that's what happened to us, for example, on October 7th. And Jesus is talking to the people, and his main 3 verses of the Beatitudes are going to be, don't be arrogant. The arrogance is going to really be more powerful. And I'll talk about it later on because I don't want to spend my time over here. But this is going to be the place that people ask me, how can you tell this is the place? Are you sure it's right to be? Can you stop it for 1 second?
Yes.
Okay. How can you tell this over here? How can you tell this over here? How can you tell? And I can say, I can tell it's the place without doubts because of one reason only. this is the shore, the northern shore, and here's Capernaum. Right over here is Capernaum. Can you see the area of Capernaum? Mm-hmm. It's about 2 miles away. 2 miles away, and I'm sure that in the first century, the Messianic community that is going to go and they're going to worship in the places that Jesus did something which was very powerful. The Sermon on the Mount, what we call Mount of Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, which is so powerful, they came to commemorate the event there all the time, and that's why they kept it. And I told you, the Jews and the Messianic, they were never expelled out of here. And of course, they came from Capernaum, they walked over here, they were sitting here, they were worshiping here, they were teaching here, and they went back to Capernaum. And that's where the place was kept. And many times when people ask me, hey, as Israeli, I mean, how can you tell this happened? And I would say, because Jewish people are very doubting. And many times if they're not so sure, they're going to go right away. It never happened. No, it never happened. We don't have not one verse in any Jewish source that talks about things that never happened here. Nobody goes against the fact that this is the place. For example, there's not even one Jewish scholar that talks about the resurrection. Which means, very interesting, Jewish people are always going against everything, they're stubborn nation and whatever. Over here, nobody came and objected this is the wrong place, and it's 100% the right place because it's so close to Capernaum, and the people who lived in Capernaum, they walked uphill, they were worshiping over here, they were teaching over here, and then went back. And they maintained the place, and later on, the Muslim kept the name of the place in the Arabic language, so I can say for sure that we are in the right place.
Mm. Yeah, one
Beautiful
time we were up here with Pastor Chuck Smith, and there was about 15 or 20 Franciscans came out with the monk with the brown. They were singing. Remember when they were singing? Amazing.
Yeah.
They all a cappella in harmonies, and it was just like angelic. It was moving. It was really moving.
We were down here on the
that's
side
beautiful.
of the
What's
hill
that?
over here.
That's right. This is where we sat with Pastor Chuck.
Yeah.
Pastor Chuck wanted to go to Mount of Beatitudes. He didn't want to go to the church, mainly because we were
Big
6-8 bus or something like that, and we wanted
10.
to make sure that we can, so we can really sit down and sing. And so we went to the rocks, and for years, remember, we used to go to the rocks. In the last few years, they are not very happy that we go there because we don't pay the entrance fees or the bar. So now they blocked it so we can. Yeah.
And the nuns would always, when we go up to the church, they have little shelters around the church where you can sit and have groups and sing and, have a teaching. And the little nuns, they come out with a basket because it's a donation. They don't charge to get in, which is kind of nice. But they give you a little basket for a donation. And then one time there was they came down to our group with a little basket, but they saw we had a really big group, so she came back with a big basket.
I remember that.
Oh, that's so funny.
Anyway, but this is a place that I love to end the day there because you really end the day. You see the whole Sea of Galilee in front of you. Most of the what you call the holy sites around the Sea of Galilee are going to be on the northern shore, mainly because this area over here on the northern shore it has 7 springs. That's why we call it Tep Tabagon Tapcha. And 3 out of the 7 springs are hot springs.
Hey. Oh.
And because the water is warmer here in this area than on the other side, most of the fish are going to come, and that's where they're going to lay the eggs. In 92 hours, the little fish are coming out. So most of the fish around the Sea of Galilee are going to be on the northern shore. So that's why all the fishermen villages are going to be on the northern shore. And that explains why Capernaum was built over there, and that explains why other, like Bethsaida and so on. And even now, if we sleep in Tiberias, I tell the people, if you're up around 2 o'clock in the morning, open your window, and you can see about 20, 30 little tiny motorboats, of the fishermen are going all the way.
There we are.
Yeah, that's where we
out on
stood.
the rocks.
Exactly, that's where we used to stand this is Mount of Beatitude without the church, which is amazing.
Just below
Now,
it.
we don't typically go into the churches because they're Roman Catholic churches.
There's Pastor Tom.
There's
Yes,
Pastor
that's right.
Tom.
Yes.
Oh. So that church that's built up there, of course, has 8 sides. It was built around 1939 by a famous Italian
Barlucci.
Antonio Barlucci. the architect. I almost said archaeologist. The architect. And it's an 8-sided church for the Beatitudes. Is it going to show Chuck?
No, not
No.
on
that
this
was
trip.
our tour. That's
This
one of
was
our tours. Okay.
Okay.
But there, of course, the Beatitudes, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. In Matthew chapter 5, interesting, Jesus begins his teaching by not telling us what to do, but how to be. Not what to do, but what to be. And in the very last verse, in verse 48 of Matthew 5, he says to be perfect, just as your heavenly Father is perfect. Kind of parallels from Leviticus 19:2, when God says, be holy, just as I am holy. So Jesus and God says to be perfect, be holy. Sounds like a tall order. Sounds like a tough task.
When it comes to Barlucci, in the 1920s, there's a guy, Benito Mussolini, does the name rings a bell? Mussolini from Italy. And Barlucci was the head of the architecture school in Rome. And one day, Benito Mussolini called him to his palace, and Barlucci showed up and said, "Hi, very honored. How can I help you?" And Mussolini said, "I had a great idea. Why don't you go to the Holy Land and build some churches?" Which Barlucci almost fell from the church down because, Mussolini was an atheist. He was against religion. And he said, "What?" He said, "Why don't you go to the Holy Land and build churches?" And Barlucci said, "Wow, what a big honor. I'd love to. I mean, the Holy Land. Excuse me for being a little question, but who's going to finance?" And the answer that Barlucci received is, "You go, I'll bring the money." And Benito Mussolini, the fascist atheist, is the one who raised the money to build 4 churches in the country. One of them is on Mount Tabor, one of them is the Mount of Beatitude, one in Bethlehem, and one is the Garden of Gethsemane. That over there you see all the nations that give the money. And this is the first church that was built by the Catholic over there on Mount of Beatitude. 8 corner, as you heard, 8 Beatitudes, and 8 because an event took place. Every place where there's an event that took place, it's going to be 8 corner church, and over here is the Sermon of the Mount.
Yeah,
That's
Sermon on the Mount.
But it's very, I can't explain how people feel when we read the Beatitudes on the Mount of Beatitude. It's really unusual.
Well, in chapter 5, he says, be perfect. Of course, he's telling us what to be, not what to do. Speaks of our position in Christ, not our practice in life. So we are perfect positionally, not practically. Practically, we're all pretty messed up. You say, "Clark, I could have got this kind of abuse at home." And then he rolls into chapter 6. He says, take heed, watch out, beware about praying, about worrying. And it's so incredible because in Matthew chapter 6, verse 25, Jesus said, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, nor about your body, what you shall wear. He said, look at the birds of the air. And as you're on the Mount of Olives, the birds or on the Mount of Beatitudes, the birds are flying. And then he says, consider the lilies of the field. The flowers are blooming. It's so practical as he's talking about nature, and it's happening right there. And is that your pastor's wife's group?
Yeah.
That's when Sally led a group of pastors' wives to Israel with Roni. And she did all the teaching, and Roni and them toured the whole site. And then chapter 7, he finishes the whole thing by judging. Don't judge. Now, of course, when he says don't judge, we're talking about the heart. Sounded like rain for a moment.
I know.
He's talking about the heart because we can judge what's right or wrong because the Bible says this is right and that's wrong. We certainly can judge right from wrong. So we can judge what people do. We just can't judge why they do it. There's the key. I have no idea the motive behind somebody's actions because only God knows the heart, 1 Samuel 16:7. So that is the Mount of Beatitudes. Love it.
And right here is the bathroom.
Yes.
It says on this page, 4 times bathroom.
4 times bathroom? Only 4? Now, Sally, just so y'all know, Sally knows where every single bathroom in Israel is.
That's right.
And bathroom in Israel, in Hebrew, is sherutim. Sherutim. So Sally is the queen of sherutim.
Well, you know, last year there
It's
was
my
a terrible
ministry.
fire.
Oh, yeah?
We were at the Capernaum and we saw fire, and I said, "Oh, someone who really is unhappy with the nuns now." And there was a fire, and we saw about 4 or 5 airplanes up in the air, and all the fire trucks came. And then a day later, we called him and said, "Can I come?" I said, "Sure. Why don't you come?" It was, you know, the smell of wet fire, you know, and then everything around the church was burnt. Everything, the church was untouched.
Wow.
Nothing, not even one little tiny sign of fire. But everything, all the trees that you see around, they were on fire.
That's sad.
Don't exist anymore.
Very interesting.
Where are we going next?
We have one more site, I think, before lunch. One more site. We're going to Kursi, Roni's favorite site.
Kursi?
Yeah.
Are we not doing Bethsaida or Korzim?
That's next.
Oh, that's next.
Kursi.
Kursi. Now, okay, I thought you were going to go.
No.
No? Okay. Now, Kursi is on the west side of the Sea of Galilee. In 1971, Israel was carving in a road on that side. It's right at the base of the Golan Heights, right below the Golan Heights on the west side of the Galilee. And they were carving in a road in 1971, and they stopped everything because they found this structure and subsequently began to excavate it. Incredible. Remember the 2 demon-possessed guys? They were right here when Jesus came over here, and they wanted to get cast into the pigs. Remember that? And the pigs ran down a steep cliff. Just a little ways away from here is the only steep cliff around the entire Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is very flat walking into the sea. The beach is very flat, except for one spot there's a cliff. And that is the only place where pigs could have ran into the Sea of Galilee. So this is Kursi. So we stop there and we talk a little bit about those 2 demon-possessed men and how Jesus healed them and how the people said, "Hey, you know, go away from us." Very sad. And in Matthew chapter 11, this is Kursi. We're not at Korzim. My bad.
I was afraid you were going to tell the story of the...
No, I wasn't.
Okay, good. Now you will.
But now you will.
No, I won't.
Okay.
No, we don't tell that story anymore.
Okay.
So are we going to go on to Bethsaida right now?
You want to say
Bethsaida?
something here, Ronnie?
No.
Okay.
No.
Now, they used to have, right here, they found this mosaic floor, amazing. But it had pictures in the mosaic. And during the Muslim invasion, they, of course, chiseled out all the pictures. So they're all gone. We don't have those anymore. Except there was a pile of dirt over one. They missed it. And the dirt got moved, and you'll see the one image there.
Right.
Very.
It was built as a fortress because when they built the church, it was already during the Muslim time. It was built as a fortress so the monks are going to be safe in the building, and that's why they have their own water. You see the water well and everything, so they're not going to be, they got everything, all the supplies are inside. Interesting how the 6th, 7th century is going to be here. And this is the cave up there that the man with the demon came out.
So right above this is a cave, just as the Bible talks about, and that's probably why they built this church here, to commemorate that event, the 2 demon-possessed men. Now, interesting, we didn't talk about the direction of the church versus the synagogue.
Right. And usually when I go into a church and you know, every church in the country is built in the shape of what you call basilica, because when Constantine put the first economical convention around 325 AD, he had to find out how can he build a structure so people can come and pray. So he took the market, Basilica's market, and he blocked all the entrance, and he left it as one long building with a main hall and two side halls. And there's going to be one main entrance and two side entrance. And every time when I come to a church like that, to a place like that, and we found out that all the synagogues were built in the same way. It's a basilica, one main entrance, one and two side halls. And many times people say, Roni, it's a basilica, it's a Christian structure. How can you tell it's Jewish? And the only way to tell it's Jewish is by directions. And for example, in Capernaum, the synagogue is facing Jerusalem. As Christian, every structure, every church is going to face the east, because the Messiah came from the east and is going to return from the east. And the wise men were in the east, and the sun is rising in the east, and the Star of Bethlehem is going to be in the east. Everything is going to come in from the east. So that's why every church in the world is facing east to accept him when he returns. The Jewish people are praying toward Jerusalem. From here, from Temecula, they're going to pray toward the east, and from India, they're going to pray toward the west. And when we're in the Dead Sea, they're going to pray north. Like that, all the Jewish people are going to pray toward Jerusalem, and in Jerusalem, you're praying toward the western wall. So the difference is always, when I see a structure, I watch where is it heading. If it goes east, I know right away in Israel it's going to be a church. And that's very powerful. So over here, we know it's facing east, we know it's a church, even though it could be a synagogue as well.
Yeah, amazing. Super cool.
Yeah.
Where we going next, Allie?
Bethsaida.
Bethsaida.
I like Bethsaida. I like Bethsaida because of it's very hard. We couldn't find it. We couldn't tell. The only reason why we found it is because before 1967, you see there are many eucalyptus trees here. The Syrian army used to plant eucalyptus trees to give them some shade. And during the Six Day War, Israeli airplane was trying to hit one of the bunkers which were under the eucalyptus trees, and poof, and a building was exposed. And right away, we found out that this little hill is not only a base, there is something under. And Rami Anav from Hebrew University started to dig over there, and he found that this is the city of Bethsaida. But we have a little problem. The city of Bethsaida is a city of fishermen. And look, can you take it back a little bit? This is the city of Bethsaida, and it's very, very far away from the sea.
Right
okay,
there.
If this is the city of Bethsaida, the sea is over here. You see the sea? And what happened? I mean, what people are going to carry the boats every morning and go to the sea? That doesn't make any sense. And this was a really hard time to identify the place, especially lava rocks. It's very, they look like rocks. You can't tell if it's a building or not. And what happened is that we were doubting very much if this is the place until about 6 years ago, Rami and I found something amazing. I found that on the slope of the hill here, there was a dock where you tie the boats, with all the rings. And then we said, what? A little tiny harbor here? And we said, how can it be? If the harbor is here and the sea is over there. And then we found out that all we did was to read our own history, because an Egyptian historian by the name of El-Muqadsi in the 10th century AD, he wrote something very interesting. He wrote, the lagoon that connected the sea and the city dried up. Poof. Now we know for sure this is the city of Bethsaida, and now you found more buildings. We are looking now for the palace of King Herod Philip, that he lived over there and he died over there and he was buried over there. But I have to tell you one thing about Bethsaida, that we have a hard time to identify places. And for example, one of the miracles that Jesus performed around the Sea of Galilee was the feeding of the 5,000. Okay? And because nobody knows, so the Roman Catholic built a church, and they said, this is the place, and that's the feeding of the 5,000 according to the Catholic Church. But over here in Bethsaida, in the Gospel of Luke chapter 9, verse 10, it says that Jesus is going to dissect the disciples, and they are going to go to Bethsaida, and the next verse is the feeding of the 5,000. So now we know the feeding of the 5,000 took place in Bethsaida, and if this is the Bethsaida that we are looking for, I can show you exactly where the feeding took place. And again, I don't have to prove anything, but over here, the archaeology is really make it very clear that the feeding is there because we found the city of Bethsaida that was lost for 2,000 years.
In fact, didn't you, were you on a plane trip with one of the archaeologists or
No.
discovered it? And you said, oh,
He's
that
just
Bethsaida.
telling all your secrets.
What?
He's telling all your secrets, huh?
Remember you were on the plane and the guy was saying, I'm going to go excavate at Bethsaida. Oh, that Bethsaida.
No, that was.
He doesn't
okay.
want to tell that story.
I have to. I'll do. It's very embarrassing, but I'll tell you no matter what. Every time when I leave the U.S., I take the same flight. It's flight 91, United from Newark to Tel Aviv, and I'm getting ready. I have my iPad, I have my headset, everything ready. I take my shoes off, and I'm getting on the flight and getting ready for a long flight to Tel Aviv, and suddenly I hear a lot of noise in the cabin, and I see about 30 kids, 20. I said, oh, man. And they were noisy, and talking to each other, and I'm telling the man next to me, I'm going to kill those kids in a minute. But I'm a good sleeper. The airplane took off. I fell asleep during the runway, and I woke up after about 9 hours, and the man looks at me, nice, good sleeping. I said, yeah, I was a little tired. He said, vacationing? I said, no, I was here working. And he asked me, oh, really, what do you do? I said, I'm a tour guide, and I spoke in some churches. I said, oh. He said, tour guide? I said, yeah. He said, have you ever been to Bethsaida? I said, yeah. So what do you think about it? And he said, it's really boring. There's nothing there. I mean, you can hardly tell anything. Then asking him, so are you going on vacation? I said, no, I'm professor of Freudman. I'm the head of the Omaha University School, and we're going to dig Bethsaida. I said, you mean that Bethsaida? I thought you were talking about the other Bethsaida. It was too late. He hated me already. But you know what? For years, every time when I came to Bethsaida, I said, Professor Brian. They said, Roni, how you doing? And everyone thought we were good friends, but I know the truth. I know exactly what he thought about me. He's the one who was digging there. He found a lot of things that connect to prove. He found the house of the fishermen, with little things of fishermen and weights of the nets. So he was great. They're still digging there, by the way, Omaha University every year.
Yeah, they found the dock. They found anchors for the boat, the stone anchors.
Yep.
And and that's like you say, the parallels in Mark chapter 6. Clearly the feeding of the 5,000 with the 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now, it's kind of interesting because in Mark's account, Matthew doesn't really give us this, but in Mark's account, in Mark chapter 6, around verse 30-ish, Jesus said they were going to Bethsaida to rest. But as on their way to Bethsaida, the multitude saw them and they beat them there. So when they got there, there was already a multitude of people there. And that's when they had the feeding of the 5,000. Right. But it's interesting. Jesus told the disciples we're going there for a time of rest because the disciples just got back from their first missionary journey. They got back from their first missionary journey, and Jesus said, let's go rest. And I thought that was interesting because the purpose for going there was to rest. But the moment they got there, the multitudes were already there. There was no rest. And I think the point for us becomes pretty important because our rest isn't about a place. They thought if they can just get to Bethsaida, they would rest. Get away from everything and everyone. Time of peace, a time of rest. But peace isn't found in a place. Peace is found in a person. In the person of Jesus Christ. In fact, in John 14:27, Jesus said, peace I give to you. My peace I leave with you. In Matthew 11:28, Jesus said, come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Rest for your soul. There's the rest. It's not an external rest based on a place. It's an internal rest based on a person. And it all happened right here at Bethsaida. Amazing.
Okay.
Where are we going next?
We're staying on schedule, and it's lunchtime.
Roni.
So here's the deal.
There's a deal?
There's a deal. Everything's changing every moment. Okay,
Roni?
go ahead.
אתה רעב? אני רעב. איפה אתה רוצה לאכול ארוחת צהריים? פה?
בחוץ.
או המושבה הגרמני?
במושב הגרמנית, yes.
יופי, סבבה.
Every time we come to Jerusalem, there's a place we call it the German colony,
The German colony.
and he disappears. Every time, then he runs away, and I don't know where to find him because he found a pizza place. They call it Sababa, and you know, usually I teach the people on the bus Hebrew a little bit from time to time, and Sababa is a great. In Hebrew, it's awesome, amazing, great, perfect, superb. That's Sababa. It's easy to remember. And every time when I'm looking for him, he's connected to a piece of pizza, of Sababa pizza.
The pizza place called Sababa
Yeah,
Pizza.
that's the name of the...
They love Sababa.
So it's Hamashova Hagermanit,
Ken.
the German colony. Anyway.